Hi, my name is DM Barr, and I write books of sex, suspense, and satire. And today is Thursday, October 15th, which means it's release day for my new book, which is entitled Saving Grace, a psychological thriller. Surprise, surprise, it is a psychological thriller. I hope you'll go out and pick up a copy. The early reviews have been really good, and I'm very grateful. My guest today is Katia Reed. She is a younger novelist, but very accomplished, and she does everything from singing to dancing to photography to writing. And her new book is set in a New York City of the future. So sit back and listen to what she has to say. I think you'll find it very interesting. And be sure to wear your mask over your nose. Be sure to cast your ballot in the upcoming election. And as always, please stay safe. Welcome to another edition of Author Groupie. I'm here with Katia Reed. She describes herself as a multi-artist and is the founder of V Scene USA. She is an artist, a filmmaker, a singer, a composer, and a dancer, as well as a photographer. And in terms of writing, she writes novels, poetry, inspirational, and comic book design, I believe. The first in her four-part series, The Foretold Story, debuted in April. She says it took 19 years to create this multi-genre sci-fi fantasy that takes place in New York City of the future. So welcome to Author Groupie.
Thanks for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure. You have so many talents, Katia. Do you feel more of a draw toward writing than your other artistic skills?
Well, like a mother that has a lot of kids, you don't really have a favorite, so I kind of nurture them all.
Okay, perfect. And so what inspired you to write this book?
I was inspired by life, its unusual and unique encounters, as well as dreams.
And you say it took you 19 years to write it. I don't mean to be rude, but you seem pretty young. So what do you mean by that? Of course, everybody is young compared to me because I'm older than dirt.
You agreed.
So how did it work that you took 19 years to write it?
Well, I started this adventure when I was 9 years old. And ever since I have been birthing it and creating it, doing originally just started out with me and a piece of paper and a pencil. I started building the worlds, the characters, and at the same time I was discovering myself and nurturing my gifts, so to speak, which kind of went hand in developing this series into manifesting it into a physical reality. And I didn't always have help, so I had to kind of learn how to do it all, including all like the art and the animation behind and the writing too. I was always a writer. I kept diaries of my days and I would write stories about characters and adventures, and voila.
Very cool. So did you study writing in school?
I did a little bit. Yes, I did. Actually, it was my creative writing professor that kind of hinted to me, well, it brought it to my attention that I was a writer. I never really acknowledged it until a few years after that. But I'm quite amazed, actually.
Very cool. So tell us about the book. What do you mean first by multi-genre? Which I assume you mean cross-genre.
Yeah, like I'd say a cinematic multi-genre sci-fi fantasy. Cinematic because I'm a very detailed writer. Multi-genre as in life has many genres. It has its funny moments, its scary moments, its romantic moments, its horrifying moments. And of course, I love technology, so I had to like add that in. And then there's those magical things that happen that are beyond this world that are just supernatural and amazing. So yeah, it all like goes right into the book.
So if a bookseller had to put it on a shelf, which is why they have the genres, where would they put it? Would they put it under fantasy? Would they put it under sci-fi?
I would think, well, that is a good question, actually. I would lean more towards the, I would say, mm, uh, I'm not quite sure actually. I would probably say sci-fi.
Okay, perfect. So um, tell us basically a synopsis, not giving anything away, but what is the book about?
The book is about this young man named Midas, who is trying to achieve his long life dream for working for the sought after skyscraper empire located in the heart of New York City. Um, but as he's going, pursuing his dream, he indirectly gets caught up in these high secret societies that kind of manipulate his life. Um, and actually open his eyes to a world he's never quite known to exist. And then from there, he is wrapped up in a battle between it's a greater battle between good versus evil, between two entities being known as the light and the beast.
And what books influenced you?
Books that influenced me, well, I draw from all kinds of inspirations, not just from books, but from movies and video games. Yes, video games like The Legend of Zelda and Final Fantasy. And then I got The Matrix and The Lord of the Rings. Oh,
Okay,
and
so
Black People You Meet on the Way to Heaven. That's a good book. Mitch Albom. I love that book.
great, a lot of different influences. How did the end result of the book differ from what you envisioned at the beginning? Since I understand it, it was different.
The end result of the book, well, um, it
What
just,
yeah, what changed? Based, you went in with a certain idea in mind. Was it different in the end?
oh yes, of course. Well, it mostly was centered around Midas, of course, because his character was essentially supposed to be super evil, but he turned out to be the complete opposite.
So
Main
you
character of the story.
so you sort of work it out as you're going along. It tells you what it's going to be.
Yeah, it just happens.
What parts of New York City will we recognize in the book?
Oh, well, you'll recognize the subway, like the whole subway life and waiting for the train and rush hour when it's way too crowded and everything. And then you'll also recognize the Metropolitan. I love that art museum. It's so beautiful. But that's also in there. There's a bit of Chinatown, like just really nice to explore the world.
Wonderful.
And Bryant Park, that's another one. The historical libraries, some of the few among many. The Highline Ballroom, yeah, that's in there too.
Oh, very cool. So give us a few examples of what real life experiences are in the book.
Well, real life experiences would be life's unusual encounters, I would say, like real life experiences as in, well, there's this section in the book where the character kind of he's doing work at an internship, and well, it's not an internship, it's actually his survival job. But in real life, it was at a time when I was doing an internship and it was really competitive, and they would make promises. If you do this job, then you'll get something in return. For me, this internship promised me that I would get to go to this really cool show for like these designers. So I was like, oh yeah, that's awesome. But they're like, here you go, hand out all these flyers. I'm like, flyers on a really hot day. So the character kind of does the same thing too, and he finds a way to meet the sales goals, so to speak. And but he doesn't get to go to the he doesn't get to go.
Oh, did you get to go?
No, I didn't.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
Life lesson there. Don't believe what they tell you.
yeah. You have like those weird encounters where it's like this stranger knows more about you than you do. Yeah, I've had a lot of those. And the character, Midas, he experiences that too. Um, one of them is he's at the Skyscraper Empire's charity ball, and he encounters this mysterious girl who kind of just appears and then disappears. And she's only there in that time of the story for like that time of when the character needs that. And I've had a lot of those moments, like when I was once working, I was having a hard time because I had like a lot of bosses that were really, pulling me down. And I'm trying to be optimistic and follow my dream and go to school and everything. And it was just a really, really bad time. And I was really discouraged. And this stranger walks up to the register I was working at. He had a fedora hat and a really nice streamlined suit. And he said to me, I was once in your shoes, and I think I'm going to tell you the story because you need to hear the story. And I'm like, okay. Firstly, he tells me, don't complain to the people around you. Only complain to the ones that can actually change things. And then he went into the story about how he was at one time in this windowless room with creepy crawly things. That's the word he used. And at the time, like Midas, I was in a windowless room with creepy crawly things, like centipedes. And he said he was so discouraged, and his roommate had said, you've got to change what you're doing to get what you want. And he's like, well, and I was like, well, what does that mean? And he's like, it means, in other words, follow your dreams and don't give up. Keep trying different things.
Yeah.
And he took his hat and he took his books that were about marketing and in foreign markets, and he left. And it was just like, I've had a lot of those moments. And I'm like, what? You can't explain those. They just happen.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you captured them and you put them in your book because it'll give it some realism.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I understand that you hope to turn the book into a movie and a concept website. How do you plan to go about doing that?
Oh, well, the concept website is actually for the larger story of this story. This novel is actually the prequel to it. The bigger story is called Gordon's Quest. And I did achieve it. It's currently in the form of a motion picture, full-length movie script, and it does have a full concept website with art, animation, characters, a bit about the stories, and just a glimmer of what can be the potential.
Okay, so if people wanted to find that online, they could?
Oh, yes, of course.
And what would that website be?
www.gordonsquest.net.
Okay, perfect. And so just personal aside, I know it's very hard to sell books that are cross-genre. Tell us about your publisher.
Well, I had to go about getting it published a more different way, actually more modern way. So oh, right. So I had to send in a manuscript. Sorry about that. I had to send in a manuscript, which then they turned the book into a book. Well, I sent in the manuscript, in which then it was printed and pressed and distributed into publishing.
Okay, so you didn't shop it around to agents or whatever?
No.
I see. Okay. And when do you expect to complete the rest of the series, since this is book one?
Well, I'm expected would be completed by next year. The next book will hopefully be out by sometime in mid-November is what we're aiming for. But there might be a possibility of some delays, but we're hoping not. But that book should be out before the end of the year for the part two. Well, book one, part two. And then we go into book two. And then the final book, which is the concluding, should be out by the end of next year.
And will they all be as long? Because I know this one was close to 400 pages.
Yeah, they told me I had to cut it in half because it was too long for a first book. That's why it's split into two parts, the first book. But I think it's about the same for each.
That's a lot of work.
I don't mind, though. I love it.
That's good. That's what's important. Well, I want to thank you for coming on, and I wish you best of luck with all of these books that you're putting together and your film. And please, whatever you do, stay safe.
Oh, you too. And thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Bye.
down the road, to the bridge over the river, to the city far from home. Toll booth takes my money,